yeah, therefore now we're already coming to our last topic. I'm very happy now to welcome Valentin shortly within our meeting. Valentin, let me quickly look for my notes. Valentin joined Personio in October 2018 as a tech recruiter. And then he changed his career upside down because today he's presenting as a product expert, which he changed in 2020. Product expert means that he's kind of like a combination between our customers and our product teams, and therefore will also be answering your customer questions. And yeah, Valentin is born and raised in Munich, but special for today, he's presenting from Dublin, because this is also where we have a Personio office, and Valentin is there for a culture carrier, so for a couple of time. And now I'm very happy to hand over to you, Valentin, and I'm looking forward to your deep dive into about integrations and how we can set up that from an IT perspective. Welcome.
Perfect. Thanks a lot for the introduction and for handing over. Let me quickly share my screen and jump back to the slides we start before that. So I think a lot said about me. So my name is Valentin. I'm a product expert at Personio, and I'm responsible for the integrations area, kind of the marketplace integrations with Personio. And today I give you a quick introduction, or kind of deep dive, let's say that way, into where we are right now with the integration, what was released recently. I know we heard already some details about the integrations in the past 90 minutes, but I'm definitely sure there will be some more information that I can provide regarding these integrations. And furthermore, I think I have a lot of time left to answer all of your questions, rather more IT or just kind of user related, basically. So whatever you want to ask, please feel free to ask, and I'm happy to answer it after the presentation. But let's jump right in. And as I said, we heard already a lot about the integration themselves, what was released recently and what we are featuring. But when we speak about integrations, I would say there are 3 integration pillars we should kind of speak in detail about first before we jump onto the integrations. The first one are the API credentials functionality that we released a couple of months ago. So basically, when you're using an integration to send data from Personio to another system or vice versa, you have to exchange API credentials with that system to ensure that the API is kind of connected, and we make sure that the data is ending up at the right place in Personio and as well in the right Personio account, so to say. So with this new API credentials functionality, we now have the option to, on the one side, give it a certain name, connect it to a certain integration, so you always know back when you're coming to that page to which kind of integration that API credentials is set for. And as well, you can create a lot of API credentials. So you don't have to rely on one pair of credentials, but you can create different sort of API credentials for all of your integrations. Furthermore, you can define the scope, what data is allowed to be exchanged, and as well, what are the readable employee attributes that are allowed to be exchanged on the API. The second part is the developer hub. The developer is not reachable from the Personio product, but on their own page. So it's developer.personio.com. And from there, we share all the rather technical details on our public API. So all of kind of the endpoints and the attributes and the functionalities you can use if you want to create, for example, your own integration. Or if you have a partner at Talent Tool, where you could imagine that would be a great integration to Personio. Feel free, if you're being in touch with them, share the developer hub. Because in the developer hub, on the one side, we provide information for customers that want to create their own custom integration or just make use of the data or send data to Personio. Or as well, we have a part dedicated for potential partners or current partners that are right now building integrations with us, basically. And the third part, of course, is the marketplace. I'm quite sure you have seen or heard about it already. It's basically, we have a web marketplace, so marketplace.personio.com, where we store all the relevant integrations right now that we have. And as well, we have a copy of that in Personio within the settings area. And on the marketplace, we list all our integrations, whether it's developed by ourselves or it's developed by our partners. And you just have either connect from the marketplace onto the integrations, or you get just regular information on the integration. What's the functionality? What's the scope? Who to contact if I'm curious about an integration, and all of that, basically. So to me, these are the 3 pillars. If you really cover all the big kind of wide variety of integrations or integration possibility at Personio. But coming from there, let's make it a bit more interactive. I'm super curious from the audience if you're using already integrations. So let me quickly start a poll here. If it works, give me a second on the screen. Oh, seems like it does not work anymore. Probably, can you help me from Munich to set up the poll? Seems not to work anymore. All right, anyway, nice test. We tested it before, now it doesn't work anymore. That's typical. Please feel free to as well drop the message in the chat.
Hello, Valentin.
Yeah.
Valentin, I just edited or started it. I will.
Okay, it cannot view the polls. Strange. Okay, anyway, but thanks a lot for the support. Please feel free to answer the poll. I'm super curious to hear how many people are already using integration, and of course, as well wondering what kind of integrations you're using. So please feel free to use that survey, and let's move on. So coming from the marketplace and the integration pillars, let's speak a bit about the integrations we offer so far and a bit more in detail. So the first two integrations I want to speak about with you is the Greenhouse and the Workable integration that was not yet teased by the colleagues the earlier two sessions, because Greenhouse and Workable are already existing integrations we offer. Greenhouse and Workable both are application tracking systems, so basically recruiting integration we offer with Personio, and they fulfill basically one workflow that's crucial for recruiting and HR management activities, so to say. So whenever you work with Greenhouse or Workable and you mark a candidate as a hired candidate, the integration will trigger a creation process in Personio. Depending on the attributes you're mapping between the Greenhouse and the Workable, we will not only create an employee, but as well send certain attribute or information from the service to Personio. So standard-wise, it always will be the first name, the last name, the email address, but you can as well map attributes like the role, the department, the location. And for Greenhouse as well, it makes sense to map the starting date, so the start date, the hiring date, so that you already know once the employee is created, that you know when the person is starting, basically, and they are in this onboarding phase. We currently support this as well with Workable. However, on Workable, we have the problem that we cannot map yet the hire date from Workable with our hire date, but we're working on that. Furthermore, with Greenhouse, you have as well the option to map a lot of custom attributes. So custom attributes on Greenhouse to custom attributes in Personio. So you can even more kind of customize this integration with Greenhouse if you want to. Then the other two integrations, is probably a bit more complex on that, is the Azure Id and the Okta integration, which Marta and Dan already spoke about today. I definitely want to give you a bit more insights on both of the integrations. The part of fact they are very similar, let's say that way. So as Dan already said, both are identity and access management tools. We mostly, with the integration, we're covering all the parts that are coming with access management. So as we said, user creation, user provisioning, and deprovisioning. So right now we cover 3 workflows with this integration, starting with the first one. Whenever you create an employee in Personio, and the integration creates a user profile in Azure Id and Okta. So from the process, it's very similar. We create the user and we as well add the user principal name, as it's called in Azure Id, or the username in Okta. And we follow a very clear syntax. Right now it comes with first name dot last name at domain, the domain you support, the domain of your company, basically. We heard already some feedback that some companies don't follow this kind of structure, first name dot last name at domain, but they have, for example, the first letter of the first name dot last name or underscore last name. So we're currently investigating that to make it a bit more flexible. Whenever we create a user, it does not always come with first name dot last name, but offer customization here so that you can kind of fit it to your workforce, basically. I think that's all. I read questions earlier that day if as well we update profiles. Yes, we do. So every time an employee profile gets updated in Personio, we update the same attributes if they are mapped on the integration. Make sure that it's mapped as well in Azure Id and Okta. Keep in mind, for the Okta integration, we can map any kind of attribute. So all system and custom attributes of Personio can be mapped to all system and custom attributes on the Okta side. So there's a lot of flexibility possible. However, in Azure Id, we don't have the possibility to map the custom attributes in Azure Id apart from the phone number, so the business phone number as well. That's right now not possible on the Azure Id side. Keep on working on that to make this as well possible, but right now we have limitations from Microsoft that doesn't allow us to do that so far. The last one is whenever you terminate an employee in Personio as well, we kind of trigger the deactivation of the user in Azure Id or Okta. So we definitely make sure we deactivate the user, we don't delete it. So we keep it up to you basically if you want to delete these accounts or still want to leave them in your tenant, but it's up to you to do with that, to deal with that basically. So this termination is triggered once the termination of the deactivation is triggered once the termination date has passed. So when we say the termination date is the 21st of a month, then the termination is basically happening on midnight for the first of the next month. In Okta, we would basically change the status to deactivated. In Azure Id, we would just block the sign-in from this kind of the settings, the sign-in, we would just start blocking sign-in for the user. So again, the user account still remains, but we just block the login or deactivate the user so that employee cannot do anything anymore with the connected integrations to your Azure or Okta tenant. And the last two integration we want to speak with you a bit more in detail today is MS Teams and Slack integration. This was as well mentioned, especially regarding the request absence functionality, but both integrations come basically with two functionalities. On the one side, for MS Teams and Slack, you can kind of define sort of a daily message from the integration wizard that will send information on either both. They can send to all four things, so absences, birthdays, anniversaries, and new journers, or can define the scope, like reduce the scope. If you only want to have absences as birthdays or birthdays and anniversary, you can define this in the integration wizard. And these informations are on a daily basis sent to certain Slack or MS Teams channels and for certain organizational units. So you can choose from offices, departments, or teams and map these informations to a certain channel in MS Teams or in Slack. Please keep in mind, we can only map to public channels in Slack and MS Teams, but not private channels. And you can as well define the time on which the update should be sent, if it's in the morning or in the evening. And as well, you can define the language you want to push the data to. So it must be in English or any else language you want to prefer where the update should be sent to. Keep in mind, right now, we cannot yet define the scope on a channel organization unit level. This is something we heard a lot in the recent weeks, so we definitely take this into consideration, but I cannot yet say when and if this will come within the next month, so to say. As well, on the daily update, we support basically any kind of absence type. We don't support remote work because we think remote work is mostly, or let's say home office. The home office category is basically not really absence. So that's why we kind of excluded this from the daily update. We still heard from some of our customers that they would like to have, for example, employees that are right now on leave, for example, parental leave, shouldn't be considered for the absence period there. We're taking this into consideration as well, still in this discovery phase and just reading through all the feedback we received throughout the last weeks. But there are definitely updates that will come through in the next months, I assume. The second one that was covered so far is the request and absence. So right now you have the chance on Slack and MS Teams to request an absence. You can either directly chat with the bot or in any channel on MS Teams, write this add Personio and then / request absence. As well, there are other types in different languages. So it's like request absence in English, and any else language has as well their own sort of request to use that. And that's the same functionality in Slack. So it's very straightforward to request that. Coming from this integration, I would like to as well have another question to you guys to keep it a bit more interactive. So from the integration, I would really love to see which of these integrations you are using already. And if it's none of these types I just presented, please click other. I'm definitely curious if there's anything else you want to share with us there. Since I cannot click on poll again, would you probably help me, Munich, to set up the poll?
Yes, I already did. So we got a couple of questions.
Awesome. So before we come to the question, I just want to demo a quick use case. I know with the integration as well, the more integration we add, there will be a lot of different use cases and workflows you can use the integrations for. I just want to guide you through one quick and then jump onto your questions. So let's take Workable in that scenario. As said, whenever you click on hired or we send a candidate to this hired stage, we basically create an employee. This is exactly in our use case here. Imagine I'm a recruiter and I finally have my kind of my job done and hired a new candidate, made them an employee. I just sent them to the hired stage, and with that, I just create an employee profile. In this case, it's Sandra. And we're creating Sandra's employee profile just by clicking on hired and Workable. Of course, it doesn't end here. So when I'm in Personio and we have that hired, we can as well still update all the attributes. And by automation, these information will send to, in this case, our Azure Id tenant. So there, a new user creates Sandra Smith, and it will populate it with her role, department, the team, and all of these sort of informations. These informations then can be used to set certain rules and automations to create her account for example, MS Teams, or for Senders if necessary, Salesforce, whatever else integrations are connected to the Azure or Okta account, basically. And so Sandra's now in Personio, she's now in Azure ID, and as said, probably is a connection to MS Teams. And let's imagine today is Sandra's first starting day. And with that, of course, there's a daily update sent to the MS Teams channel of her team, so that her team now knows, okay, Sandra Smith starting today as an HR manager on our team, and basically all triggered by integration. No manual work is necessary here, and manual interactions required to build up such a workflow by default. So quick deep dive into these new integrations as well in Workable Greenhouse. Now I'm very much looking forward to answering your questions. Yeah.
Hey, Valentin.
Hey, hello.
Hi. Thank you very much for your presentation. We have collected quite a few questions actually in the Q&A.
Awesome.
So first one is from Anneliese, who posted this one in the Personio community in the post just today. Anneliese already started using the Slack integration and she says it looks great, so she's happy with it. She has one quick question. Is it possible to select which absence types will be visible on the daily Slack updates and which ones not?
Yeah, not yet. So this is something we kind of heard feedback on in the recent weeks. That this would be nice, especially if people are on leave or on certain absence type they have created, which makes no sense to post basically on a daily update. So we're taking this in consideration for the next developments, basically. But yet I cannot really give any kind of time date on which this will be available, but we definitely have an eye on that since it popped up a couple of times.
Derek asks, and this question was also mentioned earlier, will users be able to report on the performance and development tools?
Good call out. That's planned. So if we take the goals and key results section first, this will come to custom reports for the next 4 to 5 weeks. So we're working on that. Everything else comes to feedbacks, basically feedbacks and meetings. There will be reporting functionalities available beginning of next year. This will come then with the cycle builder as well. So it's kind of included into the cycle builder.
Fantastic. I'm sure Derek is very pleased about that. Next
question. I hope
so. Next question is from Johanna or Johanna. When there is an integration, will changes then be reflected directly in Azure ID? As soon as there are changes in Personio, how does it look?
Yes, so that's happening, but it always depends on if the attribute is mapped between Personio and Azure AD. So of course we can only update attributes on the other side if the attribute is kind of mapped during the integration process. As said, if you take Azure AD, right now we only support the system attributes apart from the phone number and the cost center. And in Okta, you can basically map any kind of custom attribute from Personio to any custom and system attribute on Okta.
If anybody else has any other questions, feel free to leave them in the chat since we still have some minutes left for the Q&A. And in the meantime, I will read out the second question by Johanna or Johanna, who asks, in regards to integrating certain customized attributes to Azure, would you have a timeline when that will be possible?
Unfortunately, not really. Right now, we are, so we would love to, of course, make custom attributes available on Azure Id. However, it's more on Microsoft side and less on our side. So we're trying to find workarounds on that to make that work. But yet there's no real timeline yet when this is available, since we don't know yet if Microsoft is making a step here to allow us to map custom attributes, or if we find another way to have a workaround on that. So that's why I cannot really say if there's, cannot really comment on a timeline there yet, unfortunately.
Okay. And then I have somewhat of a basic question for you from myself. How does the setup of integrations technically work? So who does somebody need to contact? Who do I need to involve as a person to set up all of these integrations that you mentioned?
Yeah. So if we speak about the third-party integrations, so integrations were built by our partners, basically in that case, it's often set up by the partners, account executives, service manager, and so on. So it really relies on the partner. If we speak about our in-house developed integration, like the ones we talked about a second ago, you can set these up from the Personio marketplace, and it's basically a 3 or 4-step process. During this process, you have to authenticate the service, so the third-party application like Teams or Slack, authenticate Personio, and then define the attributes and all of that in the 3rd and the 4th step. We recommend that you do this together with someone from the IT in general, because often they have the access rights for Okta or Azure, or they have like this global admin rights for Slack and MS Teams. So the higher the admin rights are on Slack and MS Teams, the more channels you can map, for example, because it can only, of course, map these channels that you have access to as a user when you authenticate MS Teams, for example, in that process. So that's why we often say, make sure ideally a Personio admin and an IT admin are sitting together when they're setting up that, to really make sure it's just everything's working fine.
Thank you. And this is a question that didn't pop up in the chat, but I've heard it quite a lot in the last few days. So I'm also sharing with the public. Will it be able to approve absences in Teams and Slack?
Good question. We initially planned to introduce this functionality right away, but we now have a kind of, I would say, a better plan for that. At the moment, we're iterating, we're kind of looking for a way to import or kind of make any kind of Personio task available in Slack or MS Teams, which is including approval processes for absences. But we want to add more than just approvals into Slack and MS Teams. So this will be kind of the first next step that's on our roadmap for both integration, to make sure that you can do any kind of task you would have in Personio available in your integration, which is including approvals.
Okay. And who do I have to contact if I want to set up an Azure ID account together with Personio?
Good question. So right now it's a service team, basically, if you have any questions on the integration. At the moment, we don't really offer any setting up process only for that dedicated integration. So we offer Help Center articles, we offer the videos as well shared in the community and on the Help Center article to enable our customers to set up the integration. So the documentation should be in general sufficient to make that work. And as well, the integration wizard is pretty straightforward to make that work. But if there's still any questions, you can always reach out to the service to get support on setting this up, basically.
Amazing. And for any questions, of course, our support team, our service team, and of course, the Personio community is always happy to answer your questions. I see there are no more questions open in the chat. Massive shout out also to Lisa and Lena, who were writing all the answer at full speed. Actually, I see one last question from Kevin, and then I think I will give it back to the office in Munich. Are there any plans for integrating with Google Workspace? I've heard it quite a lot as well.
Yeah. It is definitely on the radar. So we plan to get this integration as well done earlier, but since we were, we had to reiterate our prioritization basically, since this took us way longer with Azure Id and Okta to make this work. So there is plans to add more identity and access management tools like the Google Workspace to that. However, there's no clear timeline yet when this will happen. Yeah, unfortunately, but it's definitely on the radar. We have this in our mind. as well for one login, for example.
Perfect. Kevin, your feedback has reached our product team directly. So I will give it back to the studio in Munich with Hannah.
Yes, thank you both. Massive shootout again. Also, thank you, Valentin, for presenting and helping us with all that IT-related questions. Very, very helpful. And also thank you, Daniele, for moderating those questions and collecting them. And as already said a couple of times, we will share all those videos. We recorded that meeting. We will share that content tomorrow in the community. So you can rewatch it, and we will also there answer a couple of your questions written. So take a look tomorrow in the community. We will send out also an email with that link to that recap post, so you still can rewatch all the great content we heard today from our presenters. So thank you very much. Before I say goodbye, one last announcement I would like to make, because for you as international customers, we launched now our new feature webinars. We have them already quite some time in German, and now finally starting with them, also having them in English. We will have our first new feature webinar in November, and then again one in December. It's always on the first Thursday of the month. And just to give you a little bit about the background, what it is, in the new feature webinars, we always show you the new features which we have been releasing in the last month. So for example, in the new feature webinar coming up in November, we will show you all the features we released in October. A lot of months here, but I'm super happy to welcome you on the 4th of November to our new feature webinar, first time in English. And again, we will have our international user group meeting for our product roadmap update and a couple of other deep dives again in our next quarter, which will then be in January 2022. All right, thanks a lot everyone for joining. I hope you had some great insights today and could learn a little bit more about what we have planned as Personio with people workflow automation. If you still have a couple of questions open, feel free to communicate that in the community, either within our recap post, or we also have a post open to collect questions today for that meeting. So super happy to receive your feedback there. And now if you're leaving the meeting, there will be a type form opening up. So also happy to receive your feedback on that. As said in the beginning, we're trying out a couple of different formats to include more of an offline feeling. So super happy to see what your experiences on that was. As said, that's it from my side. Thanks a lot everyone for joining. We will make this event now come to an end for this event. And I say goodbye from Munich to wherever you are joining. Thanks a lot. Goodbye.